Brought to you by Penguin.
The Winter Runaway by Katie Flynn, read by Julie Maisie. Prologue. The 13th of March 1941. Tammy Blackwell watched in a trance-like state as her father's blood dripped from the flat iron in her hand to the parlour floor. "Tammy?" She blinked as her mother's frightened voice penetrated the air. Slowly turning her attention away from the flat iron, Tammy watched her father's lifeless hands slip from around her mother's throat as she desperately tried to push herself out from underneath his body. "Tammy!" Grace cried out again, more urgently this time, her voice thick with tears. Snapping out of her trance, Tammy hastened to her mother's aid, and between the two of them they managed to roll her father onto his back, allowing Grace enough room to wriggle free. Tammy swallowed as she looked from the flat iron, now on the floor, to the bloodied gash on her father's temple. "It was an accident," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wouldn't let go of you." Grace wiped her tears with the backs of her hands as she stared at her husband. "Is he?" She paused, unable to say the word. She glanced meaningfully at her daughter. Tammy's lower lip trembled as she gingerly placed 2 fingers across the underneath of his wrist. Failing to find a pulse, she tentatively made her way up his body until she was close enough to hear him breathe. She turned round, her frightened eyes looking to her mother. "They'll hang me." The words appeared to sharpen Grace's focus, and she picked up the iron as she got to her feet. Taking great strides into the kitchen, she grabbed a tea towel and wrapped it around the iron as she walked back through to Tammy. "We need to go." "We can't just leave him here," Tammy protested. "Oh, aye, and what do you suggest we do?" said Grace, who was busy unclipping her suitcase. "I don't know, but somebody's bound to find him sooner or later, and when they do—" "We'll be long gone," said Grace. Hastily hiding the iron amongst her belongings, she added, "With no weapon to be found, they'll assume he's fallen over after having too much to drink." Tammy stared at the earthen floor and its distinct lack of sharp edges. "They're not that stupid." Clicking her suitcase closed, Grace motioned to Tammy. "Help me get him into the kitchen." Tammy did as her mother asked, and together they dragged him through by his ankles. Positioning him by the stove, Grace looked to her daughter. "It'll be hard for them to prove otherwise when the iron's at the bottom of the Clyde." She grabbed a half-empty bottle of beer from the table and put it down next to the body. "It'll help if they think he's been drinking." "If that is the case, then why run at all?" Grace stared at her daughter aghast. "Because we're women, and they'd rather take the side of a corpse than us. Men always stick together, don't you ever forget that. And I will not see you hang for saving my life, because there's not a doubt in my mind that I'd be dead if you hadn't stepped in when you did." Tammy practically jumped out of her skin as something thumped the floor of the room above their heads. "The neighbours," she gasped. With her hand half covering her mouth, she spoke thickly through her fingers. "Do you think they heard out?" "They'd have to be deaf not to have, which is why we must make haste," said Grace, who was taking care that the door wouldn't creak as she cracked it open the merest of slits and peered through to the street outside. Holding her breath, she waited for the ARP warden to walk on by before turning back to Tammy. "If we hurry, we can be gone before he reaches the far end." Tammy picked up her suitcase and looked back to the body of her father for one last time. "He wasn't meant to be here." Grace cast her daughter a rueful glance. "But he was, and we'll have to live with the consequences of that for the rest of our lives." Stepping out of the door, she indicated for Tammy to follow, and they hurried into the night. Chapter 1. 3 months earlier. Tammy wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she hurried to meet her childhood sweetheart Rory, who was waiting for her on the corner of the street. Grinning.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?